There is no greater life task than finding your purpose, or unlocking your potential. Oh, happy day, the day we finally find out what we were made for and what we are particularly good at. Yet, we do not like the taste of the cold truth, that we can only unlock our potentials through acts of bravery. Unlocking your potential is not for the timid, and this ancient David's and Goliath battle in 1 Samuel chapter 17 serves as all the inspiration and motivation you need today. In those ancient days, about 1020 to 1000 BCE, Israel and Philistia were sworn enemies. As territorial neighbors, they fought every now and then for supremacy, but this battle that included David and Goliath was particularly unique to all the other battles between these two nations in the past, the reason being, this battle was not fought by way of superior military strategies, where like usually the two sides would navigate the landscape to their advantage. Rather, the Philistines had come to besiege Soko, a strategic city in Judah that historically controlled trade routes in the region. Then when Israel finally responded to their call for war with war, the Philistines decided to pitch camp at Ephes-Dammim, also known as Boundary of Blood, near the Philistia and Judah border, and between Judean cities, Soko and Azekah. From there, they dictated the terms of battle as man-to-man combat. And I guess you all know why. They had Goliath, their champion from Gath. Meanwhile, Saul and his Israelite men also camped close by in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. Their military formations meant the Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them, and tension already on the rise. With both sides correctly lined up in their battle formations, the champion named Goliath came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span, equivalent to 9 feet 9 inches. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels, which is approximately 71 kilograms. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels, equivalent to about 8.5 kilograms. His shield-bearer went ahead of him. Goliath knew right away that men of Israel were terrified of him and his formidable build, because who in his right senses would not be? So, he proceeded to taunt them some more. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects, but if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Knowing that Israel were a deeply religious people, he then incited some more provocation by adding, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." For 40 days, Goliath came forward every morning and evening and took his stand and repeated these words, but nobody in Israel dared challenge him. All the men, including Saul, were too terrified to do anything at all. Now, the families of all the Israelites' men that had followed King Saul to war were getting anxious that they had received no word yet of how the battle was going. Jesse, David's father, was one of them, and was curious to know how his 3 oldest sons Eliab, Abinadab and Shammah were doing, in case they were even still alive. So Jesse said to his youngest of 8 sons David, "Take this ephah of roasted grain, about 23 liters of dry volume, and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp in the valley of Elah. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them." Early in the morning, which was the 41st day of Goliath's taunting of Israelite men, David loaded up and set out to the valley of Elah, which is approximately 12 to 15 miles from his home in Bethlehem, as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp about the time the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines and asked his brothers how they were. As he was talking with them, Goliath stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. Saul had promised to give the man who defeated Goliath great wealth. In addition, he was going to give his younger of 2 daughters, Michal's hand to the man in marriage, which signified royal status, and finally, Saul was also going to exempt this brave man's family from taxes. The men kept on whispering to themselves these promises of the king, and David heard them. But he wanted to confirm what he had heard, so he asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, "This is what will be done for the man who kills him." When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness?" Implying, "You are just a young shepherd, what do you know about war?" But David answered him, "Now what have I done? Can't I even speak?" David then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter, and the men answered him as before. Now, David liked what he heard and signaled that he would take up Goliath's challenge. Even if they thought it nothing more than a suicidal attempt, David's intent was reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine, your servant will go and fight him." Saul tried to talk him out by replying, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him, you are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David had never felt this sure of anything all his life, so he said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Right there, Saul realized that David was not willing to back down, so he said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you," possibly implying, "I hope you are taught a valuable lesson." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, but struggled to move freely. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I am not used to them." So, he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones, symbolic of the 5 books of Torah, from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag and, with his sling in his hand, approached Goliath at the battle line with extraordinary courage. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield-bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, of about 15 to 20 years old, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. Feeling his ego bruised, he said to David, "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" And Goliath tried to intimidate David some more. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." But David's courage was up there through the roof that day. He replied to him, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." Goliath had had enough. He pressed forward to attack David, and to possibly end this back and forth once and for all. As he charged forward, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. Seeing the giant fall flat on the ground, David ran and stood over him. He drew out the Philistine's sword from its sheath, and cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron, two of the Philistines' 5 major cities. Their dead were strewn along the Sharaim road to Gath and Ekron. David took Goliath's head and brought it to Jerusalem. He put Goliath's weapons in his own tent, before he was later brought before King Saul, where he was duly honored. They say walls have ears, and soon, the women, and all of Israel having heard of David's heroic victory, sung and chanted his name in glory. Truly, a hero was born. There is power in underestimation. Take advantage of it and stop moaning. The odds and narratives do not have to be in your favor before you can unlock your potential. Part of unlocking your potential is changing people's minds, defying the odds, and doing the unthinkable. A lot of the time, we moan and complain about how unfair life is, how rigged the system is, how much everything has been staged against us, even before we take up a challenge. When David faced Goliath, the odds were criminally in the Philistines' favor, but unlike the other Israelite men, David did not complain about what mismatch that was. Goliath's formidable build, his macho voice, his protective armor and sophisticated weapons, all those did not matter for David, for he thought, beneath all that intimidating appearance, was just another man of flesh and blood, just like him, which was truly the case. David hence thrived in that underdog tag, and when his opponent, Goliath, also looked down on him and threatened he will feed his flesh to the birds and wild animals, that only motivated him the more to try and prove him wrong, which is exactly what he did. When people underestimate you, they tend to loosen their guard in the process, and that is where you should press forward and take advantage, because why not? You would have nothing to lose, but everything to gain when you do. Goliath could have ended that fight with just a single spear throw, but he chose to attack the young David carelessly, because he thought he was no match for him, and that was his end. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Better to be lowly in spirit and among the oppressed than to share plunder with the proud. Proverbs 16 verses 18 to 19. Your tough experiences are preparing you, not condemning you. Embrace your tough experiences like an armor, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. 2 Corinthians 4 verse 17. We all face trials, and while we may triumph over some, we shall definitely fall to many. However, the lessons that we pick from every trial faced, is what builds us up to become better individuals going forward. Learn from your mistakes and grow, for your toughest life task yet, which is, unlocking your potential, would always be ahead of you, and when that time comes, it is the experiences picked up along the way that would prove key to unlocking this potential, and eventually, transforming your life. David's experiences with the bear and lion while he was a shepherd built him and his courage up towards the duel with Goliath. It will interest you to know that David's courage was not inherent, but something that he developed through his experiences, notably his time with his father's sheep. Believer, do not give up, nor berate why you keep facing trials. Count it joy, if you keep facing tough trials, because that's how you know that your potential is greater, like that of David. Only acts of bravery can unlock your potential. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 says, "For God gave us a spirit not of fear but of power and love and self-control." Unlocking your potential is your biggest life task, and surely, it comes no easy like dining and drinking. You need to be brave, you need to take courageous steps of faith to act towards your interests, for the braver deeds you do, the braver you become. At the time David fought Goliath, he had already been anointed by Samuel as Saul's eventual successor, even though that anointing came with no directives yet as to how that was going to happen. Yet, only a shepherd at the time, David knew kings were meant to be great warriors, and he would at one point need to show his bravery to the world, to earn his people's trust as their king someday, which was exactly what his victory over Goliath gave him. After his victory, the women sung and chanted his name aloud, as a sign of their confidence and delight in him. Bravery can only take you far and far. News of your bravery can take your name to places you are yet to set foot to, and remember, that is only about how recommendations and referrals in today's world come about. You do one great or bold thing, it gets stuck in people's minds forever. Finally, do remember, that your idea of the consequences of your bold attempt towards discovering what you were made for is greatly out of proportion to reality. It is all in your head, and you shall be haunted for the rest of life if you fail to act now. It is better to try and fail, because you'd eventually learn from the experience, than not try at all. There are opportunities all around you, seize them. The only reason why David found himself at the valley of Elah amongst the Israelite army that day was because he was running an errand for his father. Yet, when he got there and saw Goliath defying his country's army, which included his 3 senior brothers, he thought this was his fight too. David also realized that his countrymen were terrified, so he wanted to provide them with some hope by stepping forward to take up Goliath's challenge. And that is also how opportunities come about. Opportunities are just disguised challenges. David saw Goliath's challenge as the opportunity to unlock his potential as a leader, because as king someday, he would lead a whole nation, so why not begin now with the army? 1 Corinthians 16 verse 9 says, "For a great and effective door has opened to me, and there are many adversaries." How often we wait for until when we think we are ready, or for some stars to align before we act. We claim to be waiting for a sign that never even comes, and even if it eventually does come, that would be nothing but our own selfish interest talking to us. Unlocking your potential would come with no manual other than taking bold initiatives with faith. Delight in solving challenges around you, and with every triumph, closer and closer you get to becoming who you are destined to be. God takes care of His own. Romans 8 verse 28, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." In all things, you must have unprecedented trust in the Lord, His ways, and His word. David was a little curious and impulsive for a young man, but he was definitely not dumb or stupid. In fact, he would have been stupid not to acknowledge Goliath's incredible physique and the threat he posed as a champion. Yet he kept his calm because he knew Goliath's foul words against the Israelites' army, which he referred to as God's army, was never going to go unpunished. If anything, he believed in God's justice, and that alone for him was enough to neutralize Goliath's threat. Believer, your trust in God to take care of you must be greater than any threat or challenge inhibiting you from harnessing your potential. And lest I ask, what are you even afraid of? That you may fail? Or make a mistake, and people will laugh at you? Do not worry about all that, because God got you, and He shall take care of you, every step of the way, so you emerge victorious in your quest to fulfilling your true potential, in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you are inspired. Kindly like, subscribe and share this video to bless somebody today. We shall meet again soon. God bless you all.